Hey everyone, I'm Bren, an avid home gardener who lives in New South Wales, Australia. So don't let my Irish accent throw you off the scent. I live about an hour and a half away from Sydney, and this is my cottage garden. We're actually looking at the raised garden bed area where I'm growing quite a number of vegetables. So I thought in this week's video, it's a late spring now, so let's take a look around the patch, check out some of those edible crops. Plus, I want to give you an update on how all of my dahlias are growing. So please just sit back, relax for a few minutes, and let's get into it now. It's so peaceful out here this evening. I can hear the birds chirping and the weather has really cooled down. It's been so humid over the last few days, so I'm really delighted to be out here in this nice, relaxing environment. I got heaps of garden jobs done over the weekend. Thank goodness I had a bit of spare time. So the main priority was getting this section, the raised garden bed area, tidied up because it was getting a bit crazy, wild, out of control. And now I feel like it's a bit more manageable. I finally got this archway secured by anchoring it into the bed using 4 of these wooden stakes and securing them together using some of these zip ties that I had lying around. This is a step worth doing, especially if you've purchased a cheaper archway or trellis that are a bit flimsy. Anchoring them into the ground like this, giving them a bit more security, really does help, especially if you're prone to getting storms and strong winds. Like, the worst thing that can happen is for it to fall over, and then any of your crops that you have growing over it, like here with my scarlet runner beans, they could easily be pulled out by the roots of the ground, and there goes a harvest that you've put so much effort into. I love how bean plants wrap around the trellis like what you're seeing here. I didn't do this. This plant did it all by itself, and probably in a couple of days this part will be wrapped up. I'm hoping it reaches the top there so I have a really nice coverage. Another plant that's self-sufficient when it comes to climbing vertically are peas. But rather than wrapping around the frame like beans, peas send out these tendrils which attach themselves to the climbing frame, helping to support them in climbing vertically. We're now going to take a look at another edible crop that likes to grow upwards, but with this one it needs some help from the gardener. I'm talking about tomatoes. How cute are their flowers, so dainty. Now, while you don't have to tie up tomato plants, I prefer to do so. If I was just to leave these plants be, what would end up happening without the stakes is they would just flop over and sprawl around this area. I prefer having them tied up for a number of different reasons. But before I tell you what they are, I did want to mention that there are 2 different types of tomato plants, determinate and indeterminate. What you're looking at here are the indeterminate tomato plants, which continue growing upwards. They usually reach to 1.8 meters. However, with the determinate tomato plants, they are more of a bushy shape. They usually grow up to about 60 centimeters. I find they're more compact. They don't require staking. I also like them growing like this because it means around the beds it's very clear. I have a really good line of sight when I'm out in the garden pottering around, or my kids pottering around, because if I had tomato plants sprawling down here, I don't know what could be hiding amongst the foliage. There could possibly be snakes, and we do get a lot of venomous snakes in my area, so anything just to make this space a lot more safe. In this eggplant or aubergine bed, I popped in a few petunia seedlings. Look at the colour on that. There's 4 here in total. Now, I space them a little bit closer than the recommendation on the label. I would say these are around 10 centimeters apart when it said that I should space them around 20. But the reason for this is I'm a bit impatient and I reckon if I put them closer together, hopefully it will fill out quicker and it will look like a beautiful blanket of these pretty blooms. Something I've noticed over the years when it comes to plant spacing, if I don't follow what the label advises or recommends and I put them closer together, I tend to get smaller blooms, or if it's with edible crops, the harvests are smaller. I'm also planning on putting some dwarf marigolds in along the edge of this bed where I have the tomatoes growing. Now, tomatoes and marigolds are companion plants. They work well together. And one great thing that the marigolds do, which I've read, is that their roots release natural chemicals into the soil which help to suppress harmful nematodes and just create a really nice soil system or environment for the roots of the tomatoes to help them thrive. I'm not too sure if I did the right thing by planting these squash in this bed, because I don't feel like this bed gets enough sunlight. Originally it did, but the trees that now surround it have got much larger. The canopies do cast a bigger shadow, so we'll wait and see. But hopefully, like this squash plant, I did notice that it has formed a couple of fruit on it. Hopefully they will mature. This one is the what's it called again? I can't remember. I'll put it up on the screen. It's actually one of my favourite squashes, and I really like having these for Christmas dinner, so hopefully I'll have plenty of them. I pulled out a load of plants that weren't looking their best to make room for dahlia tubers. Oh wow, I had like 2 big boxes of them, and I was just like thinking, where am I going to put them all? So out of those 2 boxes I just planted the dahlia tubers wherever there was space. So there's a couple in here beside all of these, which are the beetroot, and the rest have been scattered around the place. I think there's like 3 inside the comfrey and the nasturtiums, and there's more in here too. I need to top the bed up. I had some other dahlia tubers in this bed which were overwintered. They're still quite small, but I did pop in a couple over here that I had pulled out this winter. You might be wondering why I have some stakes in this bed, and that's because I use them to help mark out where the tubers are, especially when they're still dormant like this one, but more so when they begin to put out their little shoots. And with me weeding these beds, I was so nervous that I'd accidentally pull one of these out in a hurry, and by doing so I would delay the growth of the flowers from the dahlias. So I thought, if I have the stake here, it's just a bit of a friendly reminder to watch out for anything here, and don't be in such a hurry to pull out any green growth. Just have a little check and make sure that it isn't a weed, that, you know, like here it is the actual dahlia itself. I did a lot of weeding, like in these 2 beds here where I have dahlia tubers that I purchased last year. So these are 2 years in the ground, and it's really, I find after 2 years, that's when they start to really take off and produce blooms. Before that, in the first year, I don't seem to get that many. Beside them I have 2 more beds which look very different compared to last week. This is where I harvested the cabbage, and I had Brussels sprouts in here, and I had some broccoli that had gone to flower. I still have the sweet peas, and I actually trellised them up, or made a start, and it looks pretty pathetic at the moment. But I planted out all of those new cut flower plants, the ones that I showed you last week, and I'm very excited to see how they grow in here. I ordered them online and they arrived a few days later in this box. Now, I find if I'm receiving any plants via the mail, the first thing I need to do is get them out of the container ASAP and give them a decent drink. Like, they've been in the dark for a few days and they're pretty thirsty. Now, over the years I have purchased plants from various different Australian online plant companies, and I have to say they have all arrived in really good condition. Like, look how much effort has gone into packaging these to make sure they're secure and they survive, you know, going through the mail. But it is possible for plants in transit to get damaged despite the efforts of the employees who wrap them up so well. So I think it's really important that once your package arrives, you need to open them up and check each plant and see, for example, there may be a broken stem, and if so, ring up the company and they'll send out a replacement. Now, when I say broken stem, I'm more so talking about a main stem, one that will affect the health of the plant. Sometimes you do get little side shoots that might have snapped off, and I don't let that bother me too much. Or sometimes you get, like, say here, you see that yellow leaf. I just pinch it off. I know it's not going to affect the plant. While I much prefer going out to garden centres, like, that's way more fun, you know, picking the plants, having a look at the beautiful displays. It is convenient sometimes to order online. Also, I do like the fact that with online companies, they seem to sell more unusual varieties. That's why I purchased these Rebecca's and the Shasta daisies. I hadn't seen those varieties in any garden centres, and I thought they would look really pretty in the garden and make great cut flowers. When I say giving the plant a drink, what I do is I fill up a bucket with some sea salt, which is like a concentrate that has lots of nutrients, and it really helps promote plant health. And then with each plant I dunk it into the bucket and I wait until all the bubbles stop. That way I know the plant is completely saturated and ready to either be popped out into the garden bed, or if you choose, replanted into a larger pot. I'm really hoping this weekend I get heaps of jobs done out here in the garden. Now, there is one area out the front that needs a lot of prep work because my zinnia seedlings are almost ready to be planted out. So I need to get that big patch cleared. Oh, we'll see how we go. I don't have any plans for the weekend, but it always ends up getting busy, especially when you have 3 kids and you become a bit of a taxi service for them. So I'm thinking if I get up super early and try and clock a few hours before 9 a.m., I will be winning. Let's hope that happens tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. I'll let you know next Friday how that goes. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you're new here, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you all again next Friday.